guys? Welcome to the live hour again. How you guys doing? As you guys come in, just say hello to me. Say hello to me. We're back again for the live hour. We're back for the live hour this Super Bowl Sunday. Sorry I wasn't here last week. Some of you obviously reached out when you didn't see me last week, and some of you have already received an answer about why I wasn't here last week. But I'll save this for the rest of the group, people who are not, who didn't ask me. Um, I just became a dad, so that's why I had to miss the live hour last week. But we're back now. We're back now, guys. We're back. How are you guys doing this fine Sunday? How are you doing? Is everybody watching the Super Bowl? Is everybody watching the Super Bowl? I myself, I'm not really a big football guy. I don't know. Something about football. I always feel like I don't like the rhythm of football. This is mostly the reason why I don't watch a lot of football. I feel like the whole stop start nature of the game doesn't really agree with me. I'm a soccer guy, right? So soccer is and there is some stop start to soccer, but at least there's at least a little bit of a rhythm, a little bit of a continuous sort of gameplay to soccer. But I don't like football very much in that sense. I like hockey. I like the pace of hockey for sure. I like I want to get more into hockey, although I didn't grow up watching a lot of hockey. But it's Super Bowl Sunday. How's everybody doing? You guys get in the comments. Get in the live chat. Let me know. Today we're going to talk about whether Albertans are being sold a lie. Are they being sold a lie by this separatist? They this week the lawyer, I should say, for the Alberta Prosperity Project, a guy called Jeffrey Rath, has been all over media, all over our mainstream media, not just social media. He's been all over the place. I couldn't move without seeing Jeffrey Rath everywhere. Um, and there's a case being made by Alberta separatists for separation right now. They're obviously pushing to get the signatures necessary to advance a referendum. And you know, there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of talk out there about all the benefits that Albertans will gain in once they get independence. So I want to talk about this with you guys today. I want to get a sense of how you feel about this. Maple Boy, uh, Maple Boy, welcome to the show, by the way. Maple Boy says maybe Jamil has something to do with Alberta. Do you mean Jamil Giovanni, Maple Boy? Is that who you mean here? Help me out with what you're saying here. I'm not sure who Jamir is. Before we get into just talking, Craig Crow says it's not even their land to begin with. Well, clearly they do feel like they have a right to be. Okay, so Maple Boy says yes, he's talking about Jamil Giovanni. Jamil Giovanni, to the best of my knowledge, is has nothing to do has nothing to do with Alberta. He's in, as far as I know, an Ontario MP. I want to say his only claim to wanting to go to the U.S. and talk on behalf of Canada. He has no authority there. He's not even the trade critic for his party. So I'm not sure what Jamil Giovanni is hoping to achieve, other than just get some clout out of feeling like he obviously feels like he can kind of like get some benefit out of his relationship with JD Vance, the U.S. Vice President. But it's all just show. It's all just show. I don't think Jamil Giovanni has anything. Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying, Maple Boy. He is a friend of JD Vance, but there's no evidence that JD Vance, first of all, agrees with a position that helps Canada. That's one. But second of all, there's no evidence at the moment that JD Vance has as much influence as you think within the Trump administration. He's a yes man like the rest of them. Some might say he's even crazier than President Trump. But I will say, recently we've been learning that the Alberta separatists have been talking to America. They've been talking to people within the Trump administration. I find this very, 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 very disgraceful. It is disgusting from the Americans to be encouraging and basically basically endorsing this. They're basically encouraging the destabilization of an ally. That is disgraceful behavior coming out of the White House. To be encouraging that and having conversations with these separatists. I'm trying to come up with an analogy for this for you guys. Imagine like you and your wife are having maybe a little bit of a tiff over what is relatively a small issue, but maybe for some reason she decides to go complaining to somebody, maybe one of your buddies, about maybe you not helping with the dishes or something, and your friend starts to tell your wife, yo, you would never have to worry about dishes if you were my wife. That is not your friend, my guy. That is not your friend. Any friend of yours that creates a hypothetical of that sort of like what the U.S. is going and saying. We heard like the Trump's Treasury Secretary saying, "Oh, there are the U.S. and Alberta are natural allies." Hey, Fox Club, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. And the real says, I don't think Canada is the ally they used to be. Okay, so are you saying that Canada is, as far as I know, maybe you can clarify for us there, Daryl. Daryl G, I think is what your handle is. As far as I know, Canada is probably the most cooperative ally there ever was. We're the best friends and best customer of the United States. What's changed about us? We're the same country we've always been towards the United States. So help me understand what you mean there, Daryl G. Yeah, Fox Club. So how's everybody doing on this Super Bowl Sunday? Oh, how's everybody doing? As I was saying, I'm not a big football fan because I don't really. I feel you could, and I'm going to make a joke. I hope you guys are open to jokes here. But I like to keep it a little bit relaxed. But you can tell that football was invented by a white person. I'm going somewhere with this. The lack of rhythm. You guys have heard the term that white boys can't dance. Yeah, the lack of rhythm in football it points to the fact that football was invented by a white person. Of course. Anyways, I'm kidding. Of course, not to. Don't take that too seriously. I'm just joking. Okay. Anyways, so what's the chat saying? Okay, so Braveheart says the US and Canada are no longer allies. They are acquaintances. We can't not be allies with the United States though, Braveheart. As much as we can try and move away and diversify our trade, we share the longest land border in the world with the United States. In some regards, our futures are intertwined. Right? Once that Arctic starts to melt and was global warming takes its course, and the Arctic becomes passable for Russian ships, we too will have to band together to defend this continent. Our futures and in many respects our present is greatly intertwined. We are going to be we have to be allies. We're either allies or we have to fight. And to some extent, I don't think that is a worthwhile venture. And this is why this trade war is so silly, right? This is why this trade war is so silly. Because while we're fighting amongst each other, China is making a killing. You guys have probably seen. I made a video about this. That the British Prime Minister did the exact same thing that Makani did. Went off to China to make a trade deal. Right? This is how dumb it is that the United States is attacking its allies like this. This is what happens. Maple Boy says Trump is acting like a bully. Yep. Abby _9 says cooperative just means lackey, and the United States doesn't really rate. Oh, so you're saying the United States doesn't really rate Canada, and Canada being cooperative just means we're just a lackey of the United States. Okay. Okay, so Braveheart says, please clarify, it is not football, it is American football. Yes, yes, yes. You know, when I first came to this country, I'm not gonna lie, when I first came to this country and I heard it being called, I heard football as I knew it growing up being called soccer. I was flabbergasted. I was like, what is this treachery? You know? I mean, I've lived in this country a long time, became a Canadian citizen in the process, but you know that still irritates me. The fact that the Americans can just co-opt the name for a sport that isn't even like. Anyways, let's we're not talking about football here. We're here to talk about politics. Um, so Maple Boy wants to talk about Pierre Polyev. Don't worry, we might talk about Pierre. Hardly can I get through a show without Pierre Polyev coming up. But today is not about Pierre Polyev. But if you want, maybe later in the show we might talk about Pierre Polyev. Maple Boy says Pierre doesn't get that Trump is the problem. Well, let's just put it like this: if Pierre Polyev chooses to attack the Trump problem, he fundamentally has to deny that he holds a lot of the positions that he does. So, you know, it's a tough position for Pierre Polyev to be in, considering he has the way he has positioned himself. And Foxstop says in American football they barely use their feet. I don't. It's like it's the shittiest name. It does come from the fact that I think the football, the American football, the ball they use is like a foot long. I think was where that came from, but still, I feel cheated even the fact that they've stolen they barely use their feet. You're right. You know? Yeah. So Foxlove says, have we lost a lot of Canadian culture because we relied on America? In a lot of ways, we are more American than we want to be. That is true. That is true. As a country, I think we focus a lot on we focus a lot on what is going on in America, and we are very intertwined in culture. We always have been. In many regards, historically, we were similar people, same people in many regards. So it makes sense that we're so intertwined with the United States. It makes sense, but at the same time, Canada, I would argue, Fox Club has a distinct culture where, for example, the United States focuses on integration and you know, having one culture, and similar to China, funnily enough. Canada focuses on distinct identity for different peoples. In many regards, that is part of the problem we have in this country, where there's so many people with distinct perspective on things. You've got the indigenous people, you've got the French, the francophone people, the various anglophone people that we have in this country, and internationals like myself, who have come to this country and made this place our home. There's just many different interests in this country, and Canada emphasizes like everybody having space, you know, as against trying to integrate into one people. There is benefit to that, but there is also obviously a downside where we can never find consensus on anything. So in that sense, I'm saying, folks, there is a distinct identity. There is a distinct identity. So Braveheart says Trump is not acting like a bully. He is a bully. I don't put Pierre Polyev and Trump in the same boat. I feel like they're different. They are different. You guys want to talk about Pierre Polyev? They are different. They are. I agree that they are different. In many regards, I don't know that what's his face that Pierre Polyev can be as overtly an asshole as Trump is. Anyways. Here's what I wanted to do today. I wanted to there's a as I told you guys at the top of the show, the Alberta separatists are out there trying to collect signatures in order to be able to trigger a referendum on Alberta independence. And their spokesperson stroke lawyer, a guy called Jeffrey Ratt, I want to say, has been all over the news this week. He's been on CBC, he's been on CTV. I think he might have gone on Fox and Friends in the United States as well. These separatists have been meeting with the American administration. Something again I'll reiterate is disgraceful behavior out of our ally. But it's the United States under Trump. What else can you expect? Anyways, so Jeffrey Rath has been all over the news, and I wanna play. I'll play you in a moment now some parts of his interview with CTV, because I think there are some interesting portions of this, and I wonder if there is anybody who is a separatist in the call in the chat. I would like for you to identify yourself. This is not for us to attack you. I It is my opinion that Canada is better as one country. Yes, should we be doing better to enhance the strengths of the different provinces in this country? Yes. Yes. And that is there's a discussion to be had there. Should we be doing more to ensure that every province can succeed in this country? Yes. Yes, of course we should be. But I happen to think we're better as a whole. We have so many different dimensions that the different provinces bring to the picture. Quebec, for example, brings, obviously there's the French speaking Canadian portion, which is something distinct about Canada that I really like. I really like that. But there's also, a lot of our tech and industries in tech are in Quebec, right? So Quebec is very important in terms of that kind of cutting edge technology. Where Alberta is today, they're very very beneficial today for the resources that they're able to provide the world. Yeah. Anyways, I want to play you Jeffrey. I want to play you Jeffrey Rath. I'll just catch I'll catch you guys the rest of your comments here. Braveheart says it is not bad to be distinct. It is bad when there is no common area where this distinct identity unites. This is Canada's issue. I agree with that. That's obviously the same thing I was saying. Yeah. So now I want to play you this Jeffrey Rath interview. Okay. So Fox Club says I would vote to separate. Wow, you would? I would vote to separate if I feel there is a plan for the future. Okay. I mean, these separatists will tell you that they have a plan, right? So, what plan actually? Now I'm curious. What plan do you think would be? I know you're an Ontario guy, folks club, but what plan do you think would be ideal for you to say, okay, yes, let's separate? What? Let's assume. I know you're an Ontario guy, but let's assume you were in Alberta right now. What could the separatists offer you that would make you vote yes on the separation? That's a question for you, folks club. Get in the comments. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I want to hear what you think about that. Oh, Maple Boy says he's from Quebec. Yes, yes, yes. That's good. That's good. We have a balance of perspective there. Maple Boy, this is a question for you as well. What could the Quebec separatists offer you that would make you vote yes on separating from Canada? So Maple Boy, that's a question for you with regards to Quebec. Folks Club, maybe it's Ontario. You want to talk from that perspective. What could the separatists offer you that will make you vote yes on separation? You guys get in the comments. I want to pull up this interview that I said I would play with Jeffrey Rath. And we'll talk about this. But you guys, I want to see those answers in the comments. Get in the comments quick. Yeah. So where were we? Here's what I want to show you here. Okay. So I'm gonna share it. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna share it here. Okay. You guys tell me you can hear this. Hey guys, Dari Lil G is saying that he can't hear anything. Is that the experience everybody else is having? If that's the experience, then I'm not going to play the video. Maybe what I'll do is I might play it off my phone instead because I'm not sure what's going on there. Can I get a confirmation from everybody else that they couldn't hear any of what Jeffrey Rath was saying there? I just need an answer real quick, okay? An answer real quick. In the meantime, I'll get back to the comments here. So Dari Lil G says if Alberta separates, it would so Craig Crow, could you hear what was playing? Could you hear the video? Help me out, Craig Crow. Okay, so Dari Lil J says, okay, Fox Club couldn't hear as well. Okay, so we're not gonna play that. Maybe I'll try and play it on my phone later. I'll play it into the mic. I mean, you just won't see the video. That's fine. But I want to address your comments here. So Daryl G says if Alberta separates, it would become day one the highest GDP country in the world by population ratio. Okay, I don't doubt that that is true, Daryl G. But but there there is more to surviving as a country than GDP. I just want to point that out, that Daryl G. There is all this talk about all the money that Alberta sends to Ottawa. Really, it's just people paying their taxes. There's no actual like, oh, we're giving you money. Is taxes, right? And the reason why Alberta has such high taxes is because people make more. And by as a percentage, there's a lot of young people working in Alberta, so you get more taxes, right? You pay more taxes, and you're right, and in some regards, this is true where I am as well. I'm in BC, where we don't get as much back in terms of equalization payments for one, but maybe probably not as much in terms of like federal transfers for infrastructure and those kinds of things as well. And by my math, a little bit of like research, that balance for Alberta comes down to about $20 to $25 billion in terms of the money they send to Ottawa in terms of taxes and the money that gets returned in terms of transfers to the province directly and transfers to individuals, somewhere around there. So there's a balance of somewhere around $20 billion. Now, clearly, you will see based on what Jeffrey Rath is saying here that they realize that they need more money in order to be able to pull this off, which is why the Alberta Prosperity Project is pursuing funds and certain guarantees or funding from the United States. In that video, you didn't hear that, but Jeffrey Rath was talking about them trying to secure $500 billion, I think, from the United States. Right now, again, it is a disgrace that our American allies are entertaining that and are willing to give them that money. Again, if you're a separatist, that's fine. I'm not going to attack you, but I'm not a separatist. I'm not a fan of Quebec doing it or Alberta doing it, of provinces doing it. I think it is absolutely stupid for us to exist in that kind of perpetual disharmony as a country. That is my opinion on this. Maple Boy says, for me, it's a straight no for separation. I don't really see the point in it. Okay. Yeah, but I'm just curious though, Maple Boy. My question was, if as a Quebec person, Maple Boy, what would make you vote yes on, because I mean, you can't say straight no, because I mean, I could paint you a situation where you would want separation. For example, you're a French speaker, right? And you're a French speaker. Imagine that the federal government suddenly goes, well, French is not that necessary. We're going to erase French as one of our official languages. You know, a bunch of English-speaking people can just move into the province. Your French will go away in a matter of maybe another 50 years. Would you still be open to being Canadian in that situation? That's why you should never say never. So I'm interested in doing this exercise where I want to know What would it take for you to say yes to separation as a Quebecer who is obviously not pro-separatist? Um, okay, so False Club says a protected North America. I'm looking towards the future. The world is changing. We have seen protecting in the Eaton Center that crossed the line when police were threatened. Not sure what you're referring to there, Folks Club. But speaking of police, I heard apparently there was a bit of a scandal with the police in Ontario. I haven't looked into it yet, but it's been all over. It's been all over the place. I've been hearing that in the news. Apparently, some officers in Ontario police got arrested. Anyways, so Foxtrot says there are pros and cons to separation. Um, and False Club says French has survived in New Orleans. Has it though? I mean, barely, barely. I guess it is. I don't know that they are identified and really given a place in the United States. If French has been preserved in New Orleans, it is because of a people that will never die. That is why French has been preserved, not because of a lack of trying to kill off French language in that country. Anyways, so what do these separatists like to say? Well, separatists like to say, and Jeffrey Rath, you couldn't hear him there. Okay, so all right, here we go. Canadian Spider-Man says, "I don't want to go down with the sinking ship that is Canada. It is not the same country that I grew up in, and they keep voting for disaster, so we have to get out for our own survival." Okay, that is an interesting point. So, Canadian Spider, here's a question for you. I want you to point to a few things that you feel are different for you, that are different now compared to when you were growing up. Obviously, you guys know, and I'm open about this. I did not grow up in a sense in this country. I came here, immigrated here, eventually became Canadian. So I'm curious, and obviously I don't have reference to the 90s and some of the good old days, as they like to say in Canada. So what I want you to do for me, and this goes for everybody else, Canadian Spider-Man, but everybody else. What has changed about Canada? Obviously, I'm familiar with the fact that the Canadian dollar was definitely a lot stronger than it is now, but where as far as I know, just on the face of it, we're still the fourth largest country by GDP in the world. I think we're behind the United States. We're behind China. Germany, I think, is the other one. But we're certainly in the top 10 for GDP in the world. As against your reference for what has changed, what has gone markedly bad for you in the last 20-30 years, I want you to. Okay, so Tommy Temper Show says Canada used to be wealthy. I would argue that Canada is still wealthy, but we're now per capita, like for each person, it feels it is we're not as wealthy per capita. I guess is more what I'll say. But actually, maybe that is wrong. I don't think that stat is right. Actually, I'll look that up. But okay. So that's what you're saying. You said Tommy Temper Show is saying most people used to be able to afford a home. Most people used to be able to afford a home. Yeah, that is fair. That is fair. That is fair. That is a fair assessment. But that said, how how in which country in the world would you say right now, even in the United States, is it any different in the United States? You could argue the United States has done. You could argue the United States has done well over the last century. Canadian Spider Man says thanks for the stream and good luck. You got my sub. Thank you for subscribing. Um, Canadian Spider Man says our buying power has changed. Housing availability, our freedoms, firearms and personal freedoms. Okay, Tommy Temperature says we used to have satisfactory healthcare. Okay. Every time someone says Canada does not have satisfactory healthcare, it always makes, as I said, I did not grow up here, and compared to where I grew up in Nigeria, and where I grew up, comparatively, the healthcare here is amazing, and my experience of the healthcare here has been, absolute good things. The fact that I could go to a clinic, have a family member in a clinic, in a hospital, and not have to pay a dime out of pocket, absolutely bazonkers. In the United States, I bet you that's not the experience, right? So there's a bit of give and take there in terms of what is satisfactory and what is not. But I take your point. You have obviously pointed to two of the most sensitive things in this country. People cannot afford a home, and that is true. That is an ongoing problem. We haven't built enough in this country. This is not even just in homes in general. Even in our capacity as a country, in our manufacturing, in so many industries, we have let our industriousness as a country slip. Right. That is a fact, and that is how we landed in this particular situation here. Okay, I've missed a few comments. So because I mean, I was having a conversation there with Canadian Spider Man and Tommy Temperature, but I want to go back and because I value obviously everybody's comments and I try and make sure I get to everybody. So Maple Boy says, I will be Canadian. This is his response to me asking him about whether he would separate. Maple Boy is from Quebec. For those of you who are not familiar with Maple Boy, Maple Boy says, I will be Canadian because I think to have a country of 8 million, if we were a separate country, would be a lot and would be challenging, and it may not work out. Yes. So, and this is a thing that I'll get back to some of the promises of a free Alberta, and we can kind of go back and forth between us, me and you guys, on whether any of these things are realistic. And I'll get to that in a sec. Okay, some of the things that a free Alberta promises. And to be fair to Tommy Temper, do you think that separating would make housing more affordable or solve the problem of healthcare as you assess it, Tommy Temper? Because that's the thing, right? You got to be careful about jumping from a non-satisfactory situation to an even worse situation. So some of the problems that you're saying are problems that I would argue are better solved within a united Canada, not as a separate country. But then again, I'll let you have your thoughts on this. So which other comments have I missed? Okay, so Fox Club says, if Canada wants to survive, why are we taxing the crap out of our citizens? You know, we do pay a lot of tax. I gotta admit that, Fox Club, that we do pay a lot of tax, and you're perfectly right to say, we and that's a perfect segue to what the Alberta separatists are promising. One of the things they're promising is that there will be no federal income tax in a free Alberta, and this is one of the big selling points. But I will say this: beware whenever somebody tells you that you can have whatever you want without sacrifice. Okay, I would be careful about that. Yes, there might be no federal income tax, but federal taxes contribute to a lot of the things that we enjoy in this country. For example, healthcare. For example, the military and some of those things, right? So when they say when the Alberta separatists tell you that there will be no federal income tax, and they tell you about very little tax being paid in a free Alberta, here's why you need to be careful about that. There is a very distinct possibility that if you're not paying as much tax, and this is something that you can probably see in the way the UCP in Alberta is going about privatizing things. if you're not paying tax and there is no requirement for providing public service, because how would you pay for your public services? Then that you end up in a situation where the rich are the only ones that get services. For example, you notice that I think the UCP, the Daniel Smith government, is talking about having like this tier system where you have private healthcare on people that can pay can access healthcare in a certain kind of like private setting, and then doctors are allowed to private practice in the private and also in the public setting. Those kinds of things lead to sort of uh, two-tier services being provided to the haves and the have-nots in society. So I would be careful when someone promises you no taxes. You have to ask, what are you giving up in order to not pay taxes? Okay, that's my opinion on that, Fox Club. Um, so Maple Boy is responding to Canadian Spider Man. That would be abandoning your country and it would run away from your problems instead of solving it. That, anyways, I'll let you guys have your conversation there. Okay, so Canadian Spider Man says, Portugal, Spain, Czech Republic, and Slovakia, Sweden, and Norway, they're better off separated. I don't know. Portugal, as of last I checked, their finances is not great. It's not great. And I mean, Sweden and Norway are great examples. Sweden and Norway are great examples. Um, but you could argue their situation is very different to Alberta's situation. A lot of people like to say, when they talk about, for example, the no tax regime that the Alberta separatists are proposing, some of them say, well, Dubai has no taxes. Yeah, but I would argue that Dubai is a very, very different situation compared to Canada. They have no requirement to provide universal health care or public pensions, and there's certainly a limited social safety net in Dubai. You go there, you work, especially if you're a person that is immigrating there. You go there, you work, you pay your taxes. Sorry, you pay your whatever fees you need to pay to play in that country. You leave before you retire. There you get very few rights back in Dubai. That is just the way it is. So be careful. As I said, know exactly what you are giving up in order to get this low tax regime that you're asking for. Portugal, as I told you, there are some good examples. As I say, Sweden and Norway are good examples. I think Norway is one of those countries that has done well as a resource country, and obviously they have their sovereign wealth fund, which they went from being that oil rich country to using their sovereign wealth fund to create more wealth in their country. That is the way to do it, right? That is the way to do it. So Maple Boy says, Carney. Oh boy, Maple Boy, this must be your French translation. You always you. I feel like maybe you type like you have. I know you're from Quebec. I feel like you type like you've got the French translation in your head. And so when it comes the literal translation in English it can be so hard to follow sometimes. Anyways, but it's okay. We love you, Maple Boy. So Maple Boy says Connie was in Davos and he says we have to accept things like it is and not how we. Okay, I get it now. So Maple Boy is saying that we have to accept things as they are and not as we wish them to be. He's quoting something that McCartney said when he was at the World Economic Forum. So Rick Vervoet or Vervoet, that sounds like a Dutch name. But Rick, hopefully I haven't butchered your name there. I'm sorry. Rick says Canada separated, aka gained independence from the British Empire in 1982, and no one had a problem with that. So what's changed? Well, here's my reasoning here. Um, okay, so what else am I missing in the comments? Fox Club says Canada has a lot of restrictions on what we can do because of different agreements. Okay, a lot of restrictions on what we can do, like what? Give me an example of what is restricted in Canada right now. Just to crystallize what you're trying to say. You guys don't worry about the time. I want to stay with you guys a bit longer today because I wasn't here last week. I want to make up for that, so it's fine. Um, okay, so Canadian Spider-Man says I used to feel that way indeed, but then I realized that most Canadians actually want what is happening. They keep voting for more socialism and more government. The East is different, and the West is a different country. Uh, okay, so Rockin' Round says Alberta wants out of the Westminster system to build out a nation for its people with absolute rights. You see, here's the thing, though. As I told you, you have to be careful what is between what understanding what is the sales pitch versus what is actually achievable in a free Alberta. So I told you about taxes, and most people would like to believe that. Oh, I see. Force Club is saying Canada has a lot of restrictions on what we can do because of different agreements, like the between the natives. Well, yes, but here's the funny concept. That's the funny concept, Force Club. Even if Alberta separates, you still have to uphold the rights of indigenous peoples. In fact, you then have to go and construct a different kind of treaty agreement with indigenous peoples. And at the moment, indigenous peoples are saying, well, we made a deal with Canada. We don't want a deal with Alberta. Okay, so if even if a referendum goes through, what happens then? It gets very messy because the indigenous peoples can just say, well, we're not leaving. We're not leaving. Then what? Then what? So so what I was saying there, you were saying that people keep voting for more socialism. Socialism, and I think socialism gets a bad rap. I think socialism gets a bad rap. There is obviously a balance to be had, and Canada maybe under Justin Trudeau focused a lot more on socialism and sort of balancing things out. And you notice that last I saw this stat, and someone can correct me if I'm misremembering this, but the poverty rate in this country actually went down under Justin Trudeau, and that is what a little bit more socialism does for you. It kind of raises everybody's floor a little bit so that people can at least get the bare minimum. What it does mean, if you're not straight capitalist, straight profit driven, is that, well, the productivity, which is is a problem in this country, become you have a lack of productivity, which is what we've experienced over the last few decades in this country, right? And that's something that McCartney is trying to bring forward. But there's people like to talk about socialism like it is the worst thing in the world. Trust me, there is. I think there is a balance to be had. It's not just as simple as saying socialism bad, capitalism good. We know what capitalism does to the poor people. We know what capitalism does to the have-nots, right? So I wouldn't be so quick to talk about socialism as the pinnacle of where Canada should be. What Canada should really be doing is striking a balance. So Rockin' Round says Alberta wants out of. Okay, I've read that one. I took that one. Craig Crow says First Nations are not provinces. I never said they were provinces, Craig Crow. I never said they were provinces. Did I say that? Did I have a slip of tongue? Did I do that thing I do when my brain says something and my mouth says something different? Somebody help me. Anyways, Canadian Spider-Man says, why would anyone want to be governed from 3,500 kilometers away? I will say this, Canadian Spider-Man. I have a problem with Quebec saying that Alberta doesn't have a right to develop their resources. And this is something that the politicians in Quebec. Okay, so I'll finish what I'm saying and get back to your comment there, Patrick Trites. I note your comment. Just give me a sec, okay? Okay, so I have a problem with politicians from Quebec saying to Alberta
that this was something that came up during the budget vote, where the Bloc Québécois and the politicians from Quebec were trying to say, well, that the federal government has to commit or something to not to cut subsidies. I think it was to Alberta oil or something. I think it was something around that premise. I don't think that any Quebec politician has a right, as long as said resources, said pipeline is not passing through Quebec territory or through the province of Quebec. Quebec has to stay out of it. They must stay out of it. The same way I have a problem with Ontario saying people should boycott electric EVs coming out of China, just because a deal was struck that benefits Saskatchewan, but they feel like they were slighted in a deal because autos out of China will undercut the market. I have a problem with provinces interfering in other provinces' business like that. I don't like that. Anyways, so where did I stop? Okay, so Maple Boy says, for me, I try to give everyone a fair chance. If you lock out the possibility that they can change your mind, we would not progress as a nation. Okay, and what else? Rock and Round says there are three outcomes for the natives: they stay on the treaty with Canada, or Alberta assumes the treaty, or the natives negotiate a new treaty with the natives. The natives negotiate a new treaty with the natives. What do you mean, Rock and Round? So here's the thing: if you operate under the assumption that Alberta land is native land, this is kind of similar to the problem we have with trying to get forced pipelines through. You will inevitably end up in court fighting over whether you can indeed take the land that Alberta sits on and form a different country if Indigenous peoples disagree. I'll just leave that there. I think Craig Crow might have something to say about this. I know Craig Crow is very much brings the Indigenous perspective to our chats. I appreciate you, Craig Crow. I know you always bring that Indigenous fire. So Patrick Trites, I've finally arrived at your comment. It says you are incorrect. He's referring to me there. It says you are incorrect. Never before has there been such large number of Canadians living in tents and unable to feed themselves. Okay. So we could get into that, but would you argue that is a function of the Here's the thing. I would argue that there is a contribution of the fact that there's a little bit more. I mean, somebody thought it was a good idea in this country to legalize to decriminalize drugs. Well, I'm curious to find out whether you whether you think that was a good idea or not. But somebody thought that was a good idea and did that. And you have a situation where there is open drug use and people with serious mental health problems are basically being left to their own devices because we don't want to infringe on their rights. That is one thing. I'm very much in favor of involuntary committal of people that have drug problems. So, I mean, you say never before has there been this many people living in tents. Well, I would argue mental health and drugs want to say in this particular matter before you start to get to some of the economic arguments. That's my opinion on that, Patrick Trites. Canadian Spider-Man says, I've lived 27 years on each coast, and I honestly, sincerely believe that there are two different cultures and countries with two different sets of values, completely different ideas about freedom and and work. You're right, but isn't that fundamentally what Canada is, though? Canada touts itself as being a mosaic, right? Like different peoples. We have never hidden as a country that we're different peoples. We've never hidden that. It's never been a thing of, adapt or get lost. That's not what Canada is, in my understanding. In the time that I've lived in this country, Canada has always been about, okay, we've got different people, sure, but different people can still find ways to coexist. Now, we don't do it as well as maybe a country like Switzerland does, where the distinct peoples can live, almost harmoniously about on almost every situation. We don't do it as well as Switzerland does. But I would say we've. I mean, yeah, there are many differences. Some of it maybe in terms of like Quebec, I don't know that I understand as well as me. Maybe somebody will explain to me. But let me just leave that there. So Crycrow says, no, that was my point, not a quote from you, just making the distinction. First Nations are nations, provinces are administrative. Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay. Crycrow says, love Canadians, stick together. There you go. You've heard Crycrow there. Canadian Spider-Man says, if natives want the land back, then we get all metals, plastics, medicines, horses, and glass back. They wouldn't want to do that, I suspect. I don't. To be fair, all that grandstanding does not help anybody. All that grandstanding about, if you want this land back, then we'll take this, and this. All that grandstanding doesn't really solve that problem. So Rock Around says natives with. Okay, you're saying natives will negotiate with the new country of Alberta, Treaty 6, 7, and 8, and they will cede the lands, and the native reserve land is approximately 3% of the total lands in Alberta. Interesting. Okay. So Patrick Trite says, not all people living in tents are drug addicts or mentally ill. Well, see, I happen to think that yes, we do need a little bit more non-market housing in this country, and this was something I touched on before, that we stopped building at some point in this country. We allowed markets determine what we should build in this country. Homes became stores of value, I guess. They became in big business. And so, in that sense, we leave a lot of people who cannot afford these, expensive rents behind, and so they end up in the streets. But I guess my point I was making to you, Patrick Trites, is that quite often these people in the streets are people who are struggling with, they are struggling through a mental health crisis before, and so they're homeless, as against they're homeless and then you get what I mean. Hopefully that makes sense, what I'm trying to say. Okay, so Rockin' Round says the natives can make a new deal with Alberta, and Alberta, that the reserve lands are owned and titled to each native person, which is not the case now. Read the treaty so you know what you're talking about. Okay. Resman is native, and Resman says, my nation was self-sufficient in beef production. Oh, okay. Resman is not indigenous. I wasn't sure where he said my nation, but he's referring to Canada, I assume. Resman says, my nation was self-sufficient in beef production and farming until they were locked in a pasture that your government called a reserve. Okay, so I guess Resman is a native, and he's saying that the reserves haven't served indigenous peoples. That's what Resman is saying there. Appreciate your input there, Resman. Our Fox Club says it can't be both. It is either Canadian land or native land. What Canadian benefits do natives get? What Canadian benefits do natives get? I mean that one. I mean they get the same. They get healthcare like we do. They certainly get lower taxes than the rest of us do. Yeah. So I mean, what do you mean? What Canadian benefits do natives get? There are some benefits for natives. What do you mean? if you're looking for for jobs in certain places, there is a requirement that natives, for example, are considered for certain roles. You know, I know this to be true specifically in the United States. In Canada, I'm not. I know a lot of jobs don't tend to ask for that, I guess. Um, so Fox Club says, I hate how potheads say they use it for medical reasons. No, I'm not addicted, bro. It's just my arthritis. I shouldn't joke about that. There are people that use pot for pain. Um, but you see a 17-year old boy knowing I'm using pot for my arthritis, and you're like, bro, dude, I haven't seen life like that. You haven't been through life like that, my guy. Like, anyways, Indigenous Viking says Google the Land and Resources Act of 1930. Treaty 6, 7, and 8 have no rights to the land. They only have rights to the crown land they live on. Sheldon Sunshine of Sturgeon Lake should get educated. Rock and Round says this is a fact. Alberta is leaving. We have had enough. Natives or not, a new Alberta nation will be developed. Okay. We'll see how the referendum goes, Rock and Round. Indigenous Viking says, Resman knows nothing. Dropped out in kindergarten. Why are you coming for Resman, Indigenous Viking? My goodness. Oh. Anyways, Construction Crony says, hello, just joining the chat. I'm Albertan. So, Albertan Construction Cronies here. I want to know, first of all, are you pro Alberta separation or not? And if you're pro separation, I want to know what you would gain, what you think you're getting out of a free Alberta that couldn't be resolved in a united Canada. Get in the comment, Construction Cronies. That one is specifically for you. And every other Albertan that is in the comments. I want to know what you guys are saying here. Resman has clarified. So we're not doing this easy, isn't he? Resman and Indigenous Viking are indigenous. So good to have you guys' perspective actually in the comments today. Rock and Round says the fact is all treaties that were signed with the Crown, all lands were ceded by the natives under those treaties. BC has an issue as most lands were not treaties. Okay. I can't claim to be an expert on treaty rights and on land rights, so I'll let you guys educate me on that. I don't want to go too deep into something. I don't want to go too deep and to talk. I'll be talking out of my ass. I try, and when I speak on this, I want to make sure I'm speaking from a position of knowledge. So Canadian Spider-Man says maps always change. History shows us this, especially with larger countries. So Indigenous Viking says, I am gathering signatures. So are you gathering? You're gathering signatures in Fort McMurray. So you're pro independence then. You're a native and you're pro Alberta separation. You're pro Alberta separation from Canada. That is interesting. That is very interesting. I want to know why, Indigenous Viking. Why would an indigenous person be pro separation from Canada? Why? What is there for you to gain as an indigenous person in a free Alberta? Let me know. Honda 450 SFM says you're absolutely correct. To Rock and Round. I'm not okay. So you're saying, okay. Oh wow, under 450 says I'm a canvasser and gathering signatures as well. Okay, interesting. Foxup says my family has contributed to the growth of Canada for hundreds of years. What makes me not native? Okay, Fox. I think Fox Club wants his own wants his own indigenous card or something. I don't know. Your indigenous card, folks club is called a passport. I don't know if you. Anyways, I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing you guys. You see, this is what this community is about on the channel. We can have different perspective on different things. We don't have to quarrel about it. We can have discussions, and you can have a discussion with people on the other side. We can have a simple conversation, right? That's what it is. So I want to go through this real quick. We are past the hour. I know that, but as I said, I was not here last week, so I want to have a conversation with you guys. If any one of you is new to the channel, obviously subscribe. Invite your friends to some of these discussions. We do this live show every Sunday at 4 p.m. Pacific time when I'm not having a baby. Last week, the reason I wasn't here was because I just became a dad. So I was running on very, very little sleep because my baby was going off. So yeah, that's why I couldn't come on last week. But we're here. We're here. So welcome to the show, those of you that are new. So I was saying that the selling point for separation in terms of lower taxes, you definitely have to know what are you willing to give up in order to have lower taxes. If you can't have the same standard you can't have the same standard of services and the same standard of programs that you enjoy without taxes. That you can't have a situation, as I said, in this country where irrespective of whoever you are, you can walk into a hospital and get treated without coming out losing an arm and a leg because you can't pay, right? Your taxes make that possible, right? So if you're it is very, very difficult, down here impossible to say lower taxes and at the same time you want all the services. I'm just saying, okay? So keep in mind, what are you willing to give up in order to get this lower taxes? Is it worth it for you? So here's the other thing. I want to talk about some of the other things that the pro Alberta separatists, the free Alberta separatists like to say is where's my notes? Okay, so let me get back to your comments for now. Okay, so Construction Crony says, absolutely yes, I am pro separation. Canada is a Westminster old school system, not a democracy. A republic, we can vote all our reps in, judges, DA, Senate, everything. Also, no more equalization. Well, I mean, so I guess the reason why a lot of people in Alberta have an issue with equalization is because Alberta obviously has a very productive population. Relatively compared to a province like Quebec, Alberta has a young population. So a lot of people in Alberta are working, doing their jobs and making all this money, and it makes sense from that perspective where you're the one paying mostly into the system to be like, well, why should I be sending all this money? But then you fast forward a few years where this young population becomes an older population. A lot of people, maybe I would argue, don't retire in Alberta. Maybe they then move to places like Quebec. There's some of the places, or maybe places like Vancouver Island. Vancouver Island is very famous for having a teeming retiree population. So maybe they move there. Then you start to realize that you're paying into the system, yes, as a young person, but once you get older, you start to reap the benefits of it. That is just a balance that I think we should consider when we talk about equalization payments. Quebec, for example, I know there is a political, there is certainly a political angle to how much equalization payment is paid to Quebec, but Quebec also has relatively compared to a lot of other provinces, an older population, right? They've also got, obviously we know of the lower per capita GDP of Quebec. Anyways, you want to be able to vote. Construction Cronies is saying you want to be able to vote judges, DAs. I disagree about voting for judges. Senate, I can agree with that. But when you start voting for judges, you have a situation where a judge would be considering their next election when they're trying to rule on certain cases. I don't want to see judges elected. I mean, imagine you saying that you want to vote for police chiefs. That is a recipe for corruption, my guy. So I mean, I can agree with you on the Senate, maybe the DA, but definitely not judges. I would say that for sure, not judges. Resman says my nation leased 4.7 million acres of our lands to the crown and settlers for one ball busting cent per acre, which payments was reneged in 1957 without my people's consultation. Yeah. Yeah, there certainly are a lot of historical injustices there. And obviously now we're landing in a situation where the sins of people past in this country is now something that, people these days in the modern day are going, well, they anyways, this is going to be controversial. So today is not the day to get into that controversial topic. Let's not talk about that today. So first up says, as Canadians, we feel weak next to the United States. Okay. Comments. Okay, so what else is here? Okay, so Canadian Spider-Man says Alberta separating might actually wake New Brunswick up. They might start to produce like they could and pay their own way. My hometown has so much crime and so many drug issues now. Yeah, I haven't been to New Brunswick before, but that's unfortunate. And to be fair, I live in BC, and there is similar stories going on on the streets of Vancouver. Just a lot in places like Surrey, a different city close to Vancouver. Places like Surrey, you see there's a lot of high crime. Obviously, in Vancouver itself, you see a lot of tent cities and drugs in the streets. Unfortunate, very unfortunate. Anyways, Construction Crony says we could pay for 2 new hospitals a year fully staffed. We could pay for 2 new hospitals a year fully staffed with money we send out. Also, we would have no to little income tax, no more GST. We can be a true democracy. I grew up in Toronto, and okay. So I mean, you've kind of had a test run of what a free Alberta could be under those of you that live in Alberta. How are you seeing the Daniel Smith administration right now? Because I think that is kind of a test run of what a free Alberta would be. Everything, a lot of things privatized, including your healthcare. How are you feeling about that? Those of you in Alberta, actually get in the comments. Let me know. Are you satisfied that if what the Daniel Smith administration is doing was expanded to something that obtains as a nation, would you be satisfied with that in terms of your healthcare, in terms of your schools, your jobs, job creation, your GDP, all those kinds of things? Would you be satisfied if you extrapolated what Daniel Smith is doing right now to the entire nation to an entire free Alberta? There's kind of an exercise I want you guys to do with me. Honda 450 SFM says all the treaties were signed and ceded land to the crown, and then reappropriated to Alberta. Okay, so Craig Crow says I just think of the retirees. Okay. Oh, Foxlove says that's why this channel is the best. I appreciate you, Foxlove. Thank you for hyping us up there. I really appreciate you. Indigenous Viking says I am indigenous and still pay taxes. it is the right thing to do. Well, that's not. I mean, yes, it is the right thing to do. But in this free Alberta, remember, You're not paying taxes. You're not paying federal taxes. I just think people are being sold on this. You're being sold a bit on a lie there. If you're being told that you're not going to pay taxes, you of course you're going to pay taxes. I mean, if you don't pay taxes, you're gonna give up something. There's no such thing. There's no free lunch. Right? There's no free lunch. You have you pay. What the best thing is when you see your taxes actually be commensurate with what you get, right? That is the utopian situation where I would pay my taxes. I mean, I pay my taxes anyways, but I would be willing to pay as much tax as it was needed if I could point to, okay, I've got top notch healthcare, I've got top notch everything, and the things I have to buy with my money, aka food inflation and those kinds of things, are down in such a way that my money can still go very far. I wouldn't mind paying taxes. I wouldn't mind paying more taxes. I pay my taxes, okay? I pay my taxes. I gotta watch my language. I'm gonna get into trouble. Anyways, okay. So what's in the comments? Okay, so Rockin' Round says we won't have socialism. We won't have socialism society. You pay as you go equally. Well, you see, when you say that, Rockin' Round, you say that because I'm guessing maybe you're a person of means. Um, you say that maybe because you're a person of means, but if you're ever a person who is disabled or a person who maybe has very little education or and has very little skills, you will find that these social programs are an absolute lifeline. So when people say socialism is the death of productivity and all that, yes, to some extent maybe it is, but at the same time, the price of leaving people behind might be greater, in my opinion. Anyways, so Patrick Trite says the royalties from oil will cover a lot more in Alberta when not wasted by the feds. I will call you on that a little bit. What happens when oil prices change? What happens by 2030 when the price of oil probably tanks? What do you do then? What do you do then as Free Alberta? What does Free Alberta do when the price of oil tanks? What do you do at that point? Okay, there's a lot of focus on what obtains today, but remember, there was not that long ago that Alberta benefited from equalization payments when oil prices tanked. Right, this has happened before. So there are. I'm just saying that there are. It's more than just you gotta think beyond oil. Even Dubai and some of these Middle Eastern countries, Middle Eastern states that people like to point to. Even Norway. We talked about Norway earlier. Norway is not just sitting there going, "We have oil." They have a sovereign wealth fund. I mean, same thing with the United Arab Emirates, right? They have a sovereign wealth fund, right? They've developed tourism as an example. You can't just be oil as a country. If that is all you do, history and examples elsewhere shows you that that is a recipe for disaster for a country. Um, okay, so Canadian Spider-Man says, I don't want to pay for socialized medicine until Canada takes that healthcare more. Oh, until Canadians take their health more seriously and get in shape. Wow. Wow. Did you just call us fat, Canadian Spider Man? Whoa. Did you just call Canadian, your fellow Canadians fat? Spanish, dude, why are you fat shaming, my guy? Why are you fat shaming? Anyways, it's all good. It's all good. It's all good. Um, but yeah, Canadians, you heard that. You better get in shape. Yeah, it's been a great show today. Actually, you guys are so involved today. I love it. I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. First off, thank you for the well wishes to me and the family. I really appreciate that, man. I really appreciate that. Okay, I want to get through the comments and then I'll sign out for the day here. Um, Okay. Let's see what's interesting because I don't think I can read everything. Okay, so this is interesting. Canadian Spider-Man says, okay, no. Canadian Spider-Man says, out of all the peoples you want to be colonized by, trust me, it is the British. You don't want to know what the Arabs, Asians did to the places they colonized. The British stopped slavery here as well. My God. I don't think people want to be colonized though, Canadian Spider-Man, but I see what you're trying to say that it could be worse. But from the perspective of the colonized, I'm pretty sure no one would enjoy being colonized. But I see your point. I see your point. Construction Crony says every other province can take care of themselves. They just refuse to. Again, I'll push back Construction Cronies. I said this before. It's almost like saying, I'll give you an example because I live in BC, right? It's almost like saying, why won't maybe I don't. I'm trying to think what's a good example. Why won't places? No, let me zoom out of the BC example. It's almost like saying, I'm trying to find an analogy for you on this. As I told you, Alberta has a young population. It happens to be a place where young people go to make money while they're young, right? So it makes sense that a lot of money is made in Alberta, right? But once people are done making that money, a lot of those people migrate out of Alberta into other provinces. So what you're saying now, it sounds to me like you're a young person, Construction Cronies, or a person of means. But what you're saying right now implies that people can work their entire lives and pay all this money into a pension plan, into and all of that. And then when they are older, you're saying that they should just be cut off and they should take care of themselves because they live in these provinces that you've deemed should take care of themselves. You see what I mean, Construction Cronies? You see what I mean? Constructor Cronies also says term limits. So he's referring to term limits for judges, for DA, and for Senate as well. Yeah, I agree with certain term limits, but I don't think the same as I told you for judges. I just leave them out of that electoral type picture. I don't want that. Okay. That is going to be problematic in the future. If we ever have to vote for judges and we ever have to vote for police, it will be bad. I don't agree with doing that. Okay. Okay. So, okay. Here's somebody that I haven't. This is your new comment. Mike A says it will cost Alberta a lot of money. It is not a free walk away. Exactly what I've been trying to tell my pro separatist friends. But the way the Alberta Prosperity Project is touting this is almost like, you're just gonna walk away and you're gonna have all this free money, and everything is gonna be honky dory. Well, here's the other thing that separatists will tell you. They're like, oh, Alberta regulates. Ottawa regulates everything. So, in a free Alberta, there will be no more regulations. No. Well, newsflash, guys, you can't. You can't not have regulation. You can't. No, because investors require you to have. Industries are not sitting there telling you they want no regulation. That is. I don't think people want to live there. People want to live in a country where you can just dump stuff into our water, the water that we drink. So realistically, an Alberta with zero regulation is a fantasy. It's not going to happen. Okay? So investors require you to have regulations because they don't want to get sued or lose their money. Investors require you to have regulation. Insurance, for insurance purposes, you're required to have regulation in place. I mean, your trading partners, the people you're going to trade with, require you to have regulations in place. So there is this, fantasy picture where people say, oh, in a free Alberta, we're not going to. Okay. Okay, so Donovan Kelly says, dumb take. Okay, help me out. What did I say that was dumb? Okay? What did I say that was dumb? How about you help me out, and I promise I'm not gonna attack you. I'm just curious what your perspective is. I want you to articulate your perspective to me, and we can have an open discussion. How about that? Okay? It's totally fine for you to disagree with me. That is okay. So Donovan, I challenge you, get in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. What did I say that you disagree with? Get in the comments. Okay. So, what else did I have for you today? I'm just waiting for Donovan to get in the comments and tell me his perspective. I really, really, really want to know. Okay, so Donovan Kelly says nobody says no regulations. Okay. So when you're talking about when nobody said no regulations, right? So that gives us a good place to start from. Okay. Now, which regulations do you have a problem with? I'll say maybe I want to make some assumptions. My assumption here is that maybe you agree with Daniel Smith, and you feel like things like the EV mandates, like the emissions cap, those are all things that are regulations that you would like to see go away. Okay, that is a good place to start. No, that is a good place to start. Now, here's something that I'm going to say, something that's going to blow your mind. Maybe you haven't seen this, but even with all these regulations in place, believe it or not, Donovan Kelly, Canada, where actually the Alberta is producing more oil today than it ever has. Believe it or not, with all these things you think are in place that prevent you from resource extraction. Yeah, I figured you were going to say tanker ban and no new pipelines. I'm about to blow your mind. Today, Alberta is still making more oil, producing more oil than it ever has, despite all these things being in place. Okay? Now, you're talking about, here's another thing. You're talking about no new pipelines. And I'm assuming that you're, oh yeah, so Canadian Spider-Man, I think Canadian Spider-Man says, thanks for the stream from the woods of BC in the Okanagan. That's my BC fella. Good to have you on the show. Join us, as I said, every Sunday. We do this every Sunday at 4 p.m. Typically it's 1 hour, but I'm trying to make up for not being here with you guys last week. So you say no new pipelines. Okay, and I'm assuming you're saying no new pipelines based on Justin Trudeau. Here's a funny concept. If memory serves, Justin Trudeau is probably the only prime minister that built a pipeline in the last 30 years. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong there. Justin Trudeau is probably the only prime minister in this country that built a pipeline. So, if your point is that it's the no new pipelines and stuff like that, there is that. And here's something else I'm going to tell you that is going to blow your mind. Apparently, there is a new pipeline that is coming up for approval right now. It's an LNG pipeline actually, and maybe this blows up your thoughts about no new pipelines. Marconi, and this may be something that gets included in the next tranche of nation building projects. I'm seeing the rumors out there. Okay. Devil is Due says Harper did. Which pipeline did Harper build? Devil is Due. Which one? We're gonna fact check you, Devil is Due, and you better be right. I'm kidding. But tell me which one, though. I'm curious. Tell me which one. Donovan Kelly says Alberta is running a deficit. Did they post a surplus last year? I don't know. I don't remember that. I don't remember if Alberta is posting a deficit. Yeah, Yeah, so Polar Vortex says $70 billion pipeline given from Canada to Alberta. Yes, the Trans Mountain pipeline expansion was sponsored by Canadian taxpayers, and no private buyers has stepped forward to buy that pipeline. I'm sure Canada will sell them that pipeline at discounts right now, but we can't get that pipeline off the books. We can't sell it. Okay? So this whole talk about no new pipelines, let me even blow your mind further. There is actually, as I was telling you, a pipeline that is possibly in the works right now, an LNG pipeline this one's going towards the United States. It is the Enbridge Sunrise expansion. You guys can look that up. And it just passed its regulatory approval, and so it is probably going to go to the major projects office. So tell me again what you're talking about with no new pipelines. Yes, there is a tanker ban because BC has interest in the waters off the BC coast, and this is what Confederation is. If Alberta were to leave Canada, believe it or not, you would still have to negotiate with BC. Only it is more difficult at that point because you are now a different country, and they can afford to put. BC can then treat you so badly that maybe they can put tariffs on you, for example, right? Okay. Foxhop says, "Have I ever gone gold panning?" No, I've never gone gold panning because I don't know what gold panning is. I apologize. I don't know what gold panning is. I'm sorry. So you're talking about the tanker ban, right? As well, the tanker ban, yes, is part of the reasons why there's no tanker traffic up the BC coast in a certain area. But right now, Daniel Smith is looking for ways to kind of bypass that. I mean, and there is a chance that this year you might see some tanker traffic in some portions of the BC coast. So you gotta give it time, and also consider some of the other stuff that have happened. Donovan Kelly, my friend. So it's okay, Donovan Kelly. We welcome you to the chat and to the channel. What else is here? Okay, so Canadian Spider-Man says, "I don't know why BC still spends more than we take in. Every budget is more deficit." Dude, that is a unique position that I think only a person from BC like me would understand. The fact that BC drives me nuts, man. BC drives me absolutely nuts. Like that, I don't know. Like if last time, I genuinely was thinking this province would vote for the Conservative that was contesting, John Rostad. But the Conservatives were such a mess, and they have been such a mess even after the last provincial election. It's similar to how Doug Ford keeps winning a majority in Ontario all the time. I'm looking at you folks, Club. It's similar to how Doug Ford keeps winning a majority all the time. It's just like it's like the opposition is just so shit. Polar Vortex says any new pipeline built as per MOU will be built by private business. And yeah, so the pipeline I was talking about, as I said, is as an expansion that is being proposed by Enbridge. And there's also talk about obviously expanding the capacity of the TMX that is already built. So yes, the problem I think with resource exploration and an increase in Alberta oil production, maybe. Construction Crony CS says, "Yes, I've been watching. Your BC Conservatives are a disaster." Thank you very much for seeing that too. Thank you very much for seeing that too. Yeah, so Polar Vortex is rightly pointing out here that Alberta threatening to separate may frighten off any business wanting to invest in a pipeline. Yes. So I think the separatists want to believe that, and this is something that Jeffrey Rath, the lawyer stroke spokesperson for the Alberta Prosperity Project, was saying. Well, they want to get the U.S. backing which I think is a disgrace for the United States to be backing separate sedition within Canada. They're not an ally to be doing that. That is not an ally type of behavior. But here we are. Um, and then there's also where was that? So the Alberta separatists are saying they want American backing, and they want to see if they can separate. But if they don't separate, they want to possibly do what the Bloc Québécois does in Quebec, and have a separatist party on the national stage. I don't want to see that shit. I don't want to see that shit. So Canadian Spider-Man says an independent Alberta will attract more business than it will put off. I disagree, but again, we all have our opinions on this. Anyways, it's been a good chat today. I gotta run, guys. I've spent 30 minutes over our usual hour. Do Albertans really trust the United States? I didn't want to be the guy to say it, man. But I don't think a lot of my separatist friends realize that you would have to you would have if you separate from Canada, you basically will become a United States vassal state. Now, some people are okay with that, but okay. So Donovan Kelly keeps saying dumb take, man. Okay, fine. Anyways, that let's leave the show there today. Okay, so Steve Rowe says Alberta is in the right direction. Ontario is fucking everyone over. And Canadian Spider-Man says, I trust the USA more than I trust Ottawa. All right. It's all good. It's all good. I want to roll the credits. You guys have been absolutely fantastic tonight. We can continue having this discussion at a later date. As I told you guys, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe and join me every Sunday. We have these discussions every Sunday, and you can come with whatever perspective you have. I'm open to having these discussions with you guys. All right, so I want to roll the credits and get out of here. You guys are so chatty tonight, but if I stay here, we're gonna keep talking all night long. We're gonna keep talking all night long. So thank you, Polar Vortex, for your comments today. Thank you, Steve Rowe. Thank you, Fox Club. Thank you, Canadian Spider-Man, for your comments today. Construction Cronies, you're an absolute legend. So thank you for your contributions to the comments. Devil is due. You put in your customary one comment and disappeared on me. Thank you, though. Thank you for contributing to the chat. Donovan Kelly, you kept on saying dumb take, man. You can disagree with me, man. It's okay. It's okay. You can disagree. We can have different opinions. That's okay. That's okay. Mike A, thank you for your comment today. Resman was one of our indigenous voices in the comments today. I appreciate that perspective. Rockin' Round, thank you for your comments. Patrick Trites was here as well. Indigenous Viking was here as well. Cred Crow was here for a little bit. Honda 450. Yeah, you guys. Rockin' Round, I got you already. Yeah, so just lots of voices here. Maple Boy was here as well. Luke, I appreciate you. I appreciate you for I thank you for joining the live show today. Devil is Due says, I know he had 2 pipelines, but it was delayed. This is the problem with this country, yeah. Building anything and this is where Canada needs to do better. Trudeau, as you rightly said, had a pipeline, but it was delayed in construction, and it was in many regards years overdue. Right? Even now, we're trying to get into the LNG market, and you could argue that Canada is late to the LNG market, and this is part of what pisses me off in some way, right? Like, we spend time dillying and dallying over what direction we want to go as a country. But by the time we decide this is the direction we want to go, it's too late. right? We're kind of late right now. We're kind of late right now to the LNG game, but I hope we're not too late. Anyways, I got to rock out of here. Thank you guys for joining. And Fox Up, thank you for the congratulations. I got to go take care of my baby now. See you guys next time. Take care.